Live from Lagos, Nigeria, this is News Central. I'm Felicity Ezewige. The top stories tonight. Senate passes Electoral Act Amendment Bill, rejects mandatory electronic transmission of election results. U.S. deploys ground troops to Nigeria as Congress sets to hold fresh hearing on allegation of genocide. And Human Rights Watch warns global system of human rights is in peril, with 72% of world's population now living under autocracy.
In business, Naira-denominated mutual funds surged by about 140% in 1 year as investors shift away from dollar assets.
And in sports, 32 Nigerian athletes begin 6-week campaign in Asaba, Delta State, ahead of 2026 Commonwealth Games.
Welcome. Tonight begins now. Thank you for joining us. We begin with the breaking news earlier this evening. The Senate has passed the Electoral Act Amendment Bill, but rejected a key proposal that would have made the electronic transmission of election results compulsory. The vote followed weeks of criticism from civil society groups who accused lawmakers of deliberately delaying action on the legislation. The bill was the sole item on the order paper after a valedictory session for the late Senator Oke Ezie. It was approved in the Committee of the Whole after lawmakers considered and adopted all 155 clauses. One of the major amendments shortens the timeline for the Independent National Electoral Commission to issue a notice of election from 360 days to 180 days. Senate President Godswill Akpabio said a joint committee of the Senate and House of Representatives will now harmonize the bill before forwarding it to President Tinubu for assent. All right, let's turn to a legal practitioner, Todimu Ige, who is in Lagos to share his perspective on this development. Thank you very much for being here with us tonight. I mean, making the transmission of results at the discretion of INEC as against making it mandatory by law. I think that's the key submission today. Your thoughts on this decision, especially in light of the agitation by civil society groups?
All right, thank you for having me. The law as it currently stands says that the transmission of the election results electronically is at the discretion of INEC. That is that they have the discretion to decide to use the IREV and ensure that the statistics or the data is transmitted electronically. Now, the National Assembly is saying that they don't want to make it mandatory for the results to be transmitted electronically, and the basis for that is their stance is that we do not have the logistic requirements for that to be in play at the moment. And that is their excuse. Now, the truth of it is the provision of the law as it stands now is that it's discretionary for INEC to make a decision. However, one would have expected that the Senate would go a step further to say that it is mandatory that the results be transmitted electronically. However, if circumstances beyond the control of INEC frustrates the effort of transmitting the results electronically, then they may now decide to vary that position. Not that they should say that they should throw it out in its entirety.
Okay, but that decision has been made. How do you think civil societies and the general public really will react to this decision, especially seeing how expectant people are with the 2027 election and the fears that there seem to be some kind of shift to one-party system?
Yes, it's quite unfortunate that the expectations of people have been broken. The expectation of the civil society, the pressure groups have been dashed. However, that is not the end because, the Senate has made a decision, but we can also continue to pressure them to ensure, because these are our elected officials. One would expect that the pressure groups can now ramp up the pressure. How do they do this? They ensure that people from various constituencies hold their senators, hold their representatives accountable, and ensure that they do right by the people, and ensure that they do right by the people of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, because these people have been elected to serve us. They have been elected to hold our brief and to ensure that things go right by us. And if the larger society feels that this is not the right way to go, then I think it's appropriate that they listen to us. And how do we do that? We continue to make our agitations and continue to say that, no, we do not want this. We believe that it can be better.
In this instance, they don't seem to have listened to what the people want and their reasoning, as you said. I mean, comme si comme ça, however you look at it. But let's look at one other issue. Notice of election was moved from 360 days to 180 days. Your thoughts on this as well?
The challenges that we have had over the years as a result of the elongated period for these notices are for you to challenge if there's an election malpractice or there's something that any participant is not comfortable with, you can go to court. Now they have reduced the timeline for the notice of for that period. Well, their reason is that so that the period can be shortened. And if they can look at it in this perspective, how much more other areas that are more beneficial to the people of the people of the country, as opposed to the ones that looks beneficial to politicians. For me, it is either here nor there, because if they can make amendment from, that's about a 50% slash of the timeline. And of course, it is a step in the right direction, but one would have expected that they would have looked at it holistically and ensure that the areas that held us back in 2022.
I have to squeeze in this question. So sorry to interject. I have to squeeze in this question on the electoral amendment. Should it be the sole responsibility of lawmakers? As a lawyer, wouldn't you like to propose that it be done by an independent arm or in conjunction with such, especially when you consider that whatever amendment is done will be targeted at favoring the lawmakers who themselves participate in the elections?
Well, that's a very brilliant question, and your submission is very valid. Ordinarily, when laws that legislation is being made or prepared, before it gets to the floor of the House, stakeholders, professionals are brought in to look at the pros and cons of this law before it even arrives on the floor. And then, of course, the Senate also has professionals who are on their retainer, who looks at this law, the logistics of it, how it's going to work. As a matter of fact, in certain times, the Senate is been seen to all them open houses, to all forums and forums for people to come in and put in their own suggestions. All these suggestions from the stakeholders, from the public, from the letters and from professionals are put together, and it assists them in reaching a decision. So I want to believe that this would have been done, but however, probably they jettisoned the advice of professionals. They did not look at the submit, or they did not consider or put much weight to suggestions of the pressure groups, which of course would have sent in their own position paper as well.
Thank you very much, Todimu, for speaking with us.
Thank you for having me.
Staying with election matters, Nigeria's Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has assured it is prepared for the 2027 general election. This comes despite lawmakers delaying passage of the amended Electoral Act they have now passed. INEC said it has completed work on an internal election timetable and schedule of activities and has shared its proposals with legislators. The chairman noted that the timing of the Electoral Act's enactment could affect some planned tasks, but the Commission will operate under existing legal framework. U.S. lawmakers are set to hold a fresh hearing on global religious freedom amid warnings that Nigeria risks sliding into widespread Christian-Muslim violence. Written testimonies submitted to the House Foreign Affairs Committee cite repeated killings, displacement and rising insecurity as evidence of a deepening religious crisis. Former U.S. Ambassador at Large for International Religious Freedom, Sam Brownback, described Nigeria as the deadliest place in the world to be a Christian, warning of early signs of broader religious conflict across Africa. The joint congressional session will also examine growing threats to religious freedom worldwide. Meanwhile, the United States has deployed a small team of troops to Nigeria following renewed security operations between between both countries. U.S. Africa Command confirmed the deployment during a press briefing on Tuesday. It said the move followed discussions between General Dagvin Anderson and President Bola Tinubu in Rome last year. Nigerian officials say the collaboration is part of ongoing counter-terrorism efforts and aims to strengthen the country's security capacity. Security analyst Dr. Dixon Osagie joins me now for this conversation. Thank you very much for being here with us. This hearing,
Thank you.
This hearing has been on for a while now, yet domestically there haven't been corresponding inquiries into the security situation in the country. What should we really be looking at when the U.S. Congress has finished its hearings?
Well, the hearing is still ongoing. I think the whole essence of the hearing is for a fact-finding purposes, because a lot of, persons have laid accusations. Some witnesses are present, ready to form the committee about the happenings in Nigeria, and also the United States government, and also its House have received a lot of petition and as well received a lot of evidence from various quarters. So for me, I think the hearing is hearing purposes. It's for fact hearing purposes, and as well also to listen to the witnesses, because in any given situation you need to have witnesses to prove the facts on the ground, not just having to hear from the media, from papers, or from persons. So these witnesses would have to, state their facts and also inform the House what went wrong, what they went through as well, and what they personally experienced during the genocide mission. And it's so sad that Nigeria is a subject of discussion in this genocide issues, because it's been long. A lot of persons, professionals, have been clamoring for actions from our government, but nothing has been heard. Whereas as we speak, Felicity, this hearing is still ongoing. The whole world is listening, and we are about to, get the action from the United States.
I guess there's so much angles to look at this, but time is always a factor. So let's just take on the one that is also in the news, the bringing of U.S. troops to Nigeria. How should we be viewing this development? There have been collaborations before now. We know that they've been sharing aerial and intelligence and all of that from Ghana, but now they're going to be on the ground. Your thoughts?
Well, fantastic. I welcome their presence on ground because the Nigerian military has gambled with the spirit of insecurity for so long. 16 years down the line, a lot of sacrifices. Many officers have killed, generals has been killed in the battlefield by these criminal elements. Officers and soldiers have been killed. A lot of families have been thrown into mourning, and this is a devastating situation. Felicity, in the 90s, when I was a barrack boy, we've seen a lot of soldiers, our parents who went to Liberia, Sierra Leone, Darfur, and other African countries that have been deviled by insecurity, go there, restore peace, and make sure that the state is presently enjoying democratically elected officials of their given state. But so sad in our own country, in the past 16 years, we've been engaging these guys as if we just play chess.
Historically, have we had instances where we have this infusion from the U.S. military come to, create, some say, a base here in Nigeria, especially when you look at the fact that there doesn't seem to be any clarity. They just say they are coming here to bring, let me see if I can find the word, unique capabilities from the U.S. for Nigeria military here. Isn't there other ways that these capabilities can be shared since it's not being disclosed?
Capability, personnel-wise, you've seen the men on the ground. I think I saw them on the ground, and that is also personnel capability. Capability can be in various formation. Intelligence sharing capability is another thing. Another aspect is personnel. So I think the personnel on the ground are ready to support our military. General Anderson, the general in charge of African Command, have stated it very clearly that he met with our president last year in Rome, and they've had some discussion, and they are trying to see how they can collaborate with the Nigerian military. And I tell you, Felicity, the few soldiers I saw on the ground this afternoon from the United States, I tell you, with an appropriate technology, they can take out this terrorist group. We don't need a lot of soldiers to take out terrorist group. Few soldiers can do the job. And in the coming days, if they want to engage these terrorists, you will come back to me and confirm this capability of the United States of America.
Well, I'm hopeful. I'm sure the Nigerians I would just want an end to the problems. Thank you very much, Dr. Sagir.
Thank you.
Coming up tonight, it's World Cancer Day, and First Lady Oluremi Tinubu calls for joint action against the scourge. Details in a moment. Very glad you're still with us. You're watching tonight on News Central. A reminder of our top stories. Senate passes Electoral Act Amendment Bill, rejects mandatory electronic transmission of election results. U.S. deploys ground troops to Nigeria as Congress set to hold fresh hearing on allegation of genocide. And Human Rights Watch warns global system of human rights is in peril, with 72% of world's population now living under autocracy. The First Lady of Nigeria, Senator Oluremi Tinubu, has called on all Nigerians to unite and wage a relentless fight against cancer. The First Lady made the call in her message marking World Cancer Day 2026 with the theme, United by Unique. She emphasized building a compassionate response through prevention, early detection, access to quality treatment, and ongoing support. World Cancer Day, observed annually on February 4, is a global initiative led by the Union for International Cancer Control to raise awareness, prevent cancer, and ensure equitable access to treatment. Cancer patients' advocacy groups are calling for increased awareness and investment, focusing on education, early detection, improved access to care, and inclusive community engagement to help combat Nigeria's cancer disease burden. This is as Nigeria joined the rest of the world to mark World Cancer Day 2026, observed globally under the theme United by Unique, highlighting that while every cancer journey is different, the fight against the disease unites millions across the world. News Centre's Aishat Salihu reports.
Cancer remains one of the leading causes of death worldwide, but patient advocacy groups here under the Sambai project are emphasizing on increased awareness and early detection, highlighting how timely screening can significantly improve survival rates.
Cancer is not a death sentence. I hope people walk away with that learning that they don't have to die, that if you early detect cancer, you can prevent it. And I know there are a lot of issues here about getting access to care, but everyone needs to be the CEO of your own health. Know your body, know your family history, and take care of yourself. And if you feel something strange, get it checked. If you know somebody in your family that's feeling something strange, get them checked.
Go to a recognized hospital. If you notice anything abnormal, let it be investigated and you assess treatment. Start from there. When they investigate and discover what it is, they refer you to a center where you can have your treatment.
Equally addressed are the care gaps which influence diagnosis and treatment outcomes, underscoring the need for patient-centered approach and stronger support systems at every stage of the cancer journey.
Cancer treatment across the world is expensive. However, the concern for us as cancer patients, for instance, last year, the Cancer Health Fund did not pay out to cancer patients. And so no cancer patient was able to access money from the government purse on cancer health, which has made us lose. Within us alone this year, we've lost 4 people who were accessing cancer health fund in 2024.
Right now, they are capturing just a few of the cancers. If expanded to cover every cancer, I think it will go a long way. The cancer drugs should be made easily available in our government hospitals where they can easily access it. You know you are getting your drugs from the right source and it's treating exactly what it is meant to treat.
If my wife wasn't there for me or, you know, my people were not there for me, that trauma alone could have even, you know, killed me on time, because I would say people are running away from me. So people that came close, surrounded me, gave me hope.
As the world unites to mark the World Cancer Day, many here say that with all hands on deck, the call for better quality of life for those impacted by the disease will drive meaningful change in the global fight against cancer. In Abuja, for News Central, Aishat Salihu.
Staying on health matters, rising consumption of sugary, salty and ultra-processed food is being linked to Nigeria's growing burden of non-communicable diseases, raising fresh concerns about the country's food environment and public health safeguards. Public health experts warn that aggressive food marketing, particularly during high-consumption festive periods, encourages excessive intake of unhealthy products and undermines efforts to promote healthier diets. Experts highlighted a widening gap between industry narratives of generosity and the long-term health impact of such campaigns, noting their contribution to rising rates of non-communicable diseases.
Comprehensive and legally binding restriction on advertising, promotion and sponsorship of unhealthy products and beverage products, particularly during festive period. Industry self-regulation has failed. They are functional largely as public relations tools rather than meaningful safeguards. Regulatory agencies must be adequately resourced. Penalties for violation must be high enough to deter misconduct, and offending companies should face sanctions that include fines, license, suspension, and public disclosure. To public policymakers, incremental responses are no longer sufficient. Nigeria must act decisively to regulate its food environment in public interest.
When people are enjoying themselves, when they are letting their guards down, when they are spending more just to feel or tap into the emotions of a particular season or celebration, these companies exploit those moments to push, unhealthy diets into the market. And because we are trying to live more, we're trying to be happy with family and friends, we tend to purchase those kind of products without understanding or knowing fully what we are taking into our bodies. That has shown, scientific studies have linked the excessive consumption of unhealthy diets to, rising non-communicable diseases that is plaguing our country.
Residents of the Yawata community in Guma local government area of Benue State have begun returning to their ancestral homes months after devastating attacks forced them into displacement in June of 2025. The homecoming follows a massive reconstruction effort fueled by private philanthropists and a multi-billion naira resettlement project recently flagged off by the state government. While over millions of naira in private housing interventions, with over a million naira, I beg your pardon, while over millions of naira in private housing interventions and 1 billion naira donation from the First Lady, Remi Tinubu, have provided new routes for many, the returnees say the journey to full recovery remains a challenging task.
We lack so many things: food, shelter, water, health. For the past year, a crop was not harvested here in Yerwata. Those that the people forced themselves to do within, not far distant, but were eaten off by the Fulani herders' cows. There were so many promises that they will rebuild the market and give us so many things here, but such things are yet to be done.
And in Kogi State, the government says the temporary closure of schools across the state is a deliberate preventive decision based on what it describes as credible and actionable security intelligence. Authorities insist the move is not driven by panic, but by the need to stay ahead of potential threats to pupils, students, and teachers, while security agencies intensify operations to neutralize criminal elements. Speaking to News Central, the Commissioner for Information and Communications, Kingsley Fanwo, said the government would rather act early than respond to avoidable tragedies, assuring parents that safety remains the top priority.
We can't just be saying that we are searching for 100 kids, small kids, in the forests because of the fact that some people didn't do their jobs. You know, they have done a great job by providing intel that this is what these people are planning. We already have our plans that we've started executing since yesterday to ensure that we can guarantee the safety of our pupils, of our students, anywhere they are in the state. And, you know, the modalities have started since yesterday. We are going to continue throughout the week. And when we are satisfied, when we have the green lights from the security agencies that we can reopen, we will reopen. But before then, we would want to take every step to be able to protect their lives, because it is life they use to have education. So we would protect their lives first when it is safe for them to go back to school, without also not necessarily disrupting the academic calendar. The state government is also looking into.
Still ahead, investigations commence into death of Saif al-Islam Gaddafi. This story and more when we return. The Group Chief Executive Officer of NNPC Limited, Engineer Bayo Ojulari, says the national oil company currently lacks the capacity to operate refineries profitably, describing the revival of the Port Harcourt refinery as a major waste of resources. Ojulari spoke at the 2026 Nigerian International Energy Summit, where he said successful refinery operations require strong financing, competent EPC contractors, and world-class operational capacity, conditions he admitted NNPC does not yet meet. The Port Harcourt refinery, rehabilitated at the cost of about $1.5 billion, was reopened in late 2024, but shut again months later after running at heavy losses. Ojulari said reviews showed poor utilization and value leakage despite regular crude supply. Professor Ezelem Agbon is a petroleum expert. He's a familiar face here. He joins us now for some insight to this latest development. There were many headlines on this story, but the one on Business Day actually caught my attention. It says, after decades of official optimism, Ojulari concedes NNPC cannot run refineries profitably. The question I want to ask is, what do we do with this capitulation at this time?
Thank you for having me. The NNPCL went through a process. First, they decided in reviewing the refinery whether to sell it off as scrap or not. Then they decided we are not going to sell it. Now, if you are not going to sell it, you have two options. Either you operate it alone, you repair and operate it alone, or you have a joint operation or joint venture with some foreign partners or with some other partners. They have now reached the second level of saying we lack the capacity to operate it alone. So now we are left with just looking for a partner, an O&M partner, operate and maintenance. And this will raise the question of equity. If you are going to get a partner, what percentage of the share of the refinery are you going to give them? Are you going to give them equity of more than 50%, or are you going to keep a controlling share? Now, let's go back to this question of NNPCL does not have the capacity to run a refinery. That is really a poor marketing of NNPCL as a commercial entity. You got to remember there's a difference between NNPC, controlled by the government, and NNPCL, which is a commercial entity. If you're a commercial entity and you lack the capability to operate a refinery, you go out in the world and you hire experts. You hire people from other refineries that have got the years of experience and the skill.
That is the proposal he's putting on the table now. But the curiosity is, why did it take so long? And why did the NNPC spend about $1.5 billion rehabilitating Port Harcourt refinery, for instance, if it lacked the capacity to run it profitably? And what should be done now?
That is not what the NNPC chairman is saying. The NNPC chairman is saying that there is value leakage. These are terminology which means there's poor management, and that they are putting raw crude into the refinery, and the products they are getting from the refinery in Port Harcourt and selling, they are doing it at a loss. If you are a commercial entity, like Dangote is a commercial entity with Dangote shareholder, NNPCL Port Harcourt is a commercial entity with the Ministry of Petroleum Resources and Ministry of Finance and the Nigerian people as its shareholder. If you're a commercial entity and you are putting crude in a refinery and they are not operating profitably, you change the management. You bring in foreign management, experienced management, and you give them KPIs. If they don't meet them, you fire them. But so when NNPC leadership says that the Port Harcourt refinery lack the capacity to run the refinery without telling us how many, there is no change in management, there is no action to stop corruption, then that conclusion, I just shake my head, because if you give that refinery to Dangote, he will operate it efficiently.
But, Prof, let me say something, at the risk of sounding naive, yeah? This is not a new thing. If you look at it from, I mean, the conversations I've even had with you on this subject, but there is other aspects to it that he highlighted. He said the situation was compounded by what he described as intense political pressure to maintain operations despite mounting losses, creating tension between commercial rationality and political imperatives. So on the one hand, yes, it's business. On the other hand, there is this safe face. You remember all the drama around the reopening of Port Harcourt refinery, when some people went there and said it's not working, the government came and said it is working. I mean, what do we do?
Well, he has done one thing correctly. When you are faced with political pressure, it's different when you are an extension of government and when you are a commercial entity. If you're a commercial entity and you are faced with political pressure, you reject them. So he has now made an economic decision. He says the thing is not financially profitable. But if you're a commercial entity and you have an operation that is not financially, is not economical, once you make that decision, you change the management, you stop the corruption, and you run it like a commercial entity. Now I ask the question, if you are commercial like Dangote, why is it that in the Nigerian environment, Dangote can run a refinery successfully as a private enterprise, and NNPCL, which is supposed to be commercial and private, cannot run it? Dangote is running it by hiring foreigners when he needs to, going all over the world to hire competent people. Well, if you want to run Port Harcourt refinery commercially, you go and find the right people all over the world, and you get them to run it.
Okay, the one part,
all action of corruption, because this, when you now say, I am going to give it to another company to operate and manage, that is nice and good, but you cannot do that without giving them equity.
Yes, but he has said three things. I don't know, quickly, we are almost out of time. He has said three things. I don't know if you concur. He said, first, financing to support operations. Second, competent EPC contractors. Third, world-class operational capacity to run the refinery. They want people who are actually running refinery. Do you think this can be achieved after all these decades of failure?
Well, they have decided that this cannot be achieved unless they bring in a partner. So, but I will say this with respect to the 3 points you have made. As an entity, they should be able to organize the finance. The problem which is pointing out is that their input of finance does not get an output that is financial, that is economical. So when it comes to operation capacity, he should go all over the world to go and find it. But rather, he has decided he's going to get a partner that runs a refinery. Let me give an example. In UAE, they have the biggest, fourth largest refinery in the world that was built in 1982. And 90% of the workers in that refineries are not from UAE. They are foreigners. And that thing runs at more than 90% capacity utilization. It has been running with this capacity utilization since 1982 because they do whatever is necessary with their UAE citizen management to make sure they bring in competent people to run it. And they have zero tolerance for corruption and zero tolerance for failure. So even when NNPCL get a partner, I don't see how you can run it unless they give more than 51%. They are planning to give 70% of the ownership of that refinery to private consign. Maybe Dangote cannot go over there and run it cheaply like he always wanted to do. Well, but all I want to say is that NNPCL is a commercial entity. It should ignore political pressure, and if they cannot run any place profitably, they should fire the management, go all over the world and hire foreign management to run it for them.
All right, Bob.
The first option is what they are considering now, which is operate and manage. If we do operate and manage in Nigeria, we will never become an industrialized nation that is self-sufficient in energy.
We have to go now. Thank you so much for speaking with us. We appreciate your time. Human Rights Watch, HRW, has released its annual World Report 2026, warning that the global system of human rights is in peril, with 72% of the world's population now living under autocracy. In the report published on Wednesday, the rights body warned that the United States, China, and Russia are led by leaders who share open disdain for norms and wield considerable economic, military, and diplomatic power. It further notes that under relentless pressure from U.S. President Donald Trump and persistently undermined by China and Russia, the rules-based international order is being crushed, threatening to take with it the architecture human rights defenders have come to rely on to advance norms and protect freedoms. Libyan prosecutors have opened a formal criminal investigation into the killing of Saif al-Islam Gaddafi, son of the country's late ruler Muammar Gaddafi, after he was shot dead in Zintan. Officials said forensic teams have been sent to the scene to gather evidence and identify suspects. Saif al-Islam was once viewed as a prominent political figure and potential leader in Libya's fragmented landscape, though he held no formal government position. Prosecutors said the probe will continue as officials work to determine responsibility and support legal proceedings under Libya's judicial process. We'll be back with business, sports, and entertainment news. Please stay with us.
Looking at business now, Naira-denominated mutual funds recorded a dramatic surge of about 140% within 1 year as investors increasingly shifted away from dollar assets, signaling renewed confidence in local currency investments, according to KPMG. While dollar-denominated mutual funds grew modestly by 12% from 1.71 trillion naira in 2024 to 1.92 trillion naira in November 2025, naira-based funds expanded sharply from 2.29 trillion naira to 5.48 trillion naira, highlighted in KPMG's 2025 Banking Industry Customer Experience Survey. The shift reflects improving macroeconomic conditions, relative currency stability, and stronger economic growth, which have influenced household savings and investment decisions across income groups. Away from that, Nigeria's telecommunications sector recorded a surge in data consumption beyond 13.2 million terabytes in 2025, even as growth in mobile subscriptions slowed. Active mobile lines rose modestly to 179.64 million in December, with tele-density at 82.87%, reflecting a market nearing saturation. In contrast, internet usage accelerated sharply, driven by streaming, digital payments, remote work, and social media. Broadband penetration climbed to 51.97% as internet subscriptions reached 112.67 million. And looking at the equities markets, well, activities extended gain as the all-share index rose 0.31% to 168,030.18, lifting market capitalization to about 107.861 trillion naira, supported by selective sector buying. And how the sectors are performed as we recorded. We start with the banking industry that actually led the rally with 2.33% gain. Now, insurance slipped 0.84%, with ICO and Cornerstone Insurance facing some mild selling pressure. Oil and gas advanced 1.52%. Consumer goods shed 0.23%, as Nigerian breweries and Dangote Sugar recorded modest losses. And finally, industrial goods rose 0.69%, with cement majors extracting a steady beat. That's it on business. I am Lekon Onabanjo.
Welcome to Sports Update. 32 Nigerian athletes have begun a 6-week intensive camping program in Asaba Delta State as preparations gather momentum for the upcoming Commonwealth Games in Glasgow. The camp, which features 16 male and 16 female athletes, marks the first phase of Athletics Federation of Nigeria build-up and focuses on track and field disciplines including sprint, relays, jumps, and throws. The athletes arrived in camp on Saturday. Training is being supervised by a 6-man technical crew led by the AFN head coach Solomon Aliu, with specialist coaches assigned to sprint relays, hurdles, and jumps. AFN Technical Director Gabriel Okon is coordinating the technical framework, athletes monitoring and adherence to federation standards. President of the Athletics Federation of Nigeria, Todobo Kokowa, said the program is aimed at sharpening fitness, refining techniques, and identifying athletes in peak condition. The Edo State government has approved a 2-week closed training camp for selected athletes and coaches ahead of the second edition of the Niger Delta Games scheduled in Benin City from the 20th to 27th of February. The program, starting Sunday, aims to intensify preparation and fine-tune performance for the regional sports festival. Trials to select athletes began across all 18 local government areas, covering 17 sports associations, with only top performance under the approved under-20 age bracket eligible to represent Edo State. The Edo State Sports Commission is overseeing the process to ensure credible selection, with all trials expected to conclude by Friday. The games will feature athletes from the 9 states of the Niger Delta region. And now to football. Kun Khalifa FC have been sanctioned by the Nigeria Premier Football League for failing to honor their match day 24 clash against Al Kanemi Warriors on the 2nd of February. The club's explanation for missing the fixture was deemed unacceptable under the NPFL framework and rules. As a result, Kun Khalifa FC will forfeit 3 points and 3 goals to Al Kanemi Warriors, and a 10 million naira fine has been imposed, suspended for the remainder of the season if no further breaches occur. The club has 48 hours from date of notification to appeal the decision. The ruling reinforces the league's commitment to fixture integrity and regulatory compliance. And that wraps it up on Sports Update. I am Favor Itua. Entertainment is up next with Kate.
Tonight in the world of entertainment, Nigeria's music industry has received a major boost as the Copyright Levy Order is finally implemented, with the Musical Copyright Society Nigeria, MCSN, receiving 1.2 billion naira in levy funds. The payment made under Section 89 of the Copyright Act 2022 covers musical works and sound recordings and marks the first time the levy has been activated since it was introduced into Nigeria's copyright framework. MCSN says the development was made possible by the political will of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, alongside support from the Attorney General of the Federation, the Minister of Finance, the Accountant General, and the Nigerian Copyright Commission. An Ikorodu High Court has ordered 3 independent DNA tests to be conducted abroad to determine the paternity of Liam, the son of late singer Ilerioluwa Aloba, popularly known as Mohbad. The ruling follows complications that stalled earlier attempts to carry out the DNA test, further prolonging the dispute between Mohbad's family and his widow. Mohbad's father, Joseph Aloba, appeared in court with his lawyer, Barrister Oladayo Ugungbe, who explained that concerns over the suitability of the initial testing facility led the court to approve a new process. According to Ugungbe, each party will nominate 1 foreign laboratory while the court will select the 3rd. All tests will be tissue-based and the results must match before a conclusion is reached. Now that's it on entertainment news for tonight. My name is Kate Adeogun.
And that's the news tonight. But before we go, a quick recap of our top stories. Senate has passed the Electoral Act Amendment Bill, but rejected mandatory electronic transmission of election results. U.S. has deployed ground troops to Nigeria as Congress holds fresh hearing on allegation of genocide. We also brought you news that Human Rights Watch has warned global system of human rights is in peril, with 72% of world's population now living under autocracy. Send us your eyewitness report and your thoughts using the number showing now on your screen. You can do that on social media as well at News Central TV. You can watch us live on DSTV channel 422, GoTV channel 23, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV, and on YouTube. As always, thank you very much for your kind company. Have a good night.